Welcome back to the Refine Your Foundation podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Schweitzer. This is episode 4 of season 1, and I'm excited to introduce our next guest. She is all the way from Canada. She's a dietitian, personal trainer, and running coach. So, Steph Hnatiuk, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right, thank you. So go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself and your business to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, I'm Steph Hnatiuk, and I am all the way up here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. But, like so many of us nowadays, we are available virtually around the world doing all this online business stuff, which is so cool to be able to connect with people in all of these new ways. My company is called Stephanie Hnatiuk Performance Nutrition. So I'm the founder of that and the owner of the Fuel Train Recover program. So that's specifically my online program, my model where I help runners really dial in their nutrition, their training, and their recovery strategies so that they
Love it.
can, unlock those levels of performance that they deserve with all the hard work
Mhm.
that they put into the sport.
Awesome. So you're a running coach. I know you are a runner. So what came first? You being a dietitian or your love from running?
You know what? I've always been really passionate about sport nutrition. So when I was studying nutrition, I knew that I wanted to work with athletes and active people to some degree. The running specifically was a little bit of a niche market that I kind of took on later on, but I always knew that sport nutrition was kind of my thing. And I sort of, when I think about why that is, I think it's because I really love that I get to tell people to eat more. My so much of nutrition and so much of that diet culture space that we live in is always about people having to restrict and take things away and don't eat
Uh-huh.
this and watch that and whatever. And in performance nutrition, the message is always no, you need to fuel more and you need more food. You have to eat more and more often. And
Oh, I
I
love
think that
that.
that's what I really enjoy about working in this space is that most of my job is just encouraging people to eat more food.
That's great. That's a really interesting perspective of, why, why you got into that field. And it makes total sense. You want, yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
Um,
and you see this like really direct payoff with,
mhm.
fueling and performance. And it's so clear when people start to really incorporate these lessons and use this performance nutrition strategy, like they feel better right away. They see the benefits in their performance right away. It's such a quick gratification, which we often don't get in the nutrition space. So it's
Right.
really exciting to work in this field.
Do you get a lot of pushback from the runners? Like are they receptive to that strategy and that advice? Or are they more hesitant with fear or apprehension that they're not going to get, that the outcome that you expect?
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit 50-50. I mean, people are reaching out to work with me because something's not working, right? If
Mhm.
if someone thinks that they're doing great and they have no problems, no concerns about their performance or their energy levels, they're probably not going to reach out to work with a dietitian. So the people
Mhm.
that are coming into my space and are, wanting to get my help and my guidance, they know that something's not clicking, but what they think the problem is often not what the real problem is. So people will think, oh, I just need to like have more willpower. I just need to eat less and move more. I just need to, stop with this like sugar addiction that I have. I need to just, cut out all these foods so I stop having so many cravings. And when they learn that the solution is actually to have maybe a higher calorie target, to eat more often throughout the day, to stop intermittent fasting or skipping meals, they're receptive, but sometimes it's hard because it's the total opposite of everything else that they've been told for sometimes many, many years.
Mhm.
So we get there eventually. We often get there eventually, but it's a little bit of a process of learning to get more in touch with those hunger and fullness cues, make peace with eating more things like carbs, to be okay with that intra-run fueling, like having some added sugars in your diet in those intra-run fuel. And the beautiful thing is that the outcome is there, like the result that people are looking for. They will perform better. They will see the improvements in their body composition that they want. It
Mhm.
takes time, but if we just, can trust the process, just like we have to with our running training, if we can just trust
Right.
the process, we will get there. It's just not an overnight quick fix.
Like everything.
Well, that's exactly right. And sometimes the immediate, oh man, my workout quality is so much better. Oh, I'm fueling and I'm feeling so good. I can't believe how fast I can run and how much longer I can go now. Those quick payoffs are the things we really have to focus on in the beginning because the
Mhm.
long-term results just take time.
Right. Now, you may have touched on this already. You said one thing that kind of jumped out at me that could potentially fall in this category. What is a myth about nutrition that you feel like you always have to debunk when these people come to you for help?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just there's so much fear around food.
Mhm.
I mean, carbs specifically are having a real moment right now where, for the
Mhm.
past number of years, people have been really taught that they need to fear carbs and limit and restrict them and that they're bad. And there's just so much misinformation that's conflicting that's swirling around in people's minds. So,
Mhm.
we see we're just bombarded day in and day out with diet information. And the biggest challenge is that it's all very inconsistent with what these different diets, different programs and things say that you should and shouldn't eat. So people often find themselves at this point where they've heard all the things. They have so much information swirling around in their minds that every single food decision they try to make throughout the day is just racked with second guessing themselves, with guilt, with shame, with negativity. They don't know what to eat when. They can't make a decision about what to have for breakfast, and it just becomes this weight on their shoulders of not being able to figure it out despite having the entire internet at our fingertips of information.
We still
It's
don't know.
information overload. Yeah. And so then swoops in the intermittent fasting, right? And the solution there is, well, just don't worry about it because you just don't eat. You don't have to make decisions about food because we could just take away all of that, don't worry about it. And
Uh-huh.
so I think that's why this particular diet trend has really hung on for so many years at this point, is because it takes some of the decision making away. And that makes it easier for people to stick with something, even though ultimately for runners and, athletes and particularly endurance athletes with their high energy demands, it is not something that is going to be beneficial for
Right.
performance.
Right. Let's narrow down that like that carb topic a little bit more and explain or go into a little bit more detail about sugar, if you can. And just as a runner, we know sugar is good for energy, what type of sugar we want to consume, and then what type of sugar we don't want to consume. 'Cause I know a lot of people when they hear sugar, they just think all sugar is the same, whether it comes from a bag of candy or an apple.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, there are hundreds and hundreds of different kinds of sugar, but from a
Mhm.
performance nutrition perspective, I like to put them into two separate categories. There's kind of two kinds of sugar that we can talk about for
Mhm.
runners. There's fast sugars or fast carbs, and then there's slow carbs. And
Mhm.
so there's a time and a place for both in our runners' diets. Or, again, this could apply to any athlete who needs some kind of intra workout or pre workout fuel in that sense. So these slow carbs are going to be your whole grains, your fruits. They have some fiber in them, so the glycemic index can be a little bit lower for those. Basically, these slower carbs take longer to digest. They have more fiber. And so the energy that they give us takes a little bit more time to reach our bodies, like to go from our digestive tract into our bloodstream. So that's what we want to be having as kind of the core foundation of our meals throughout the day, right? We want carbs that are going to keep us full. They're going to give us energy, but we don't necessarily need that quick, immediate access to that energy.
Mhm.
Then on the other hand, we have our fast carbs, and our fast carbs are going to be our candy, our fruit juices, our sports gels, right? The things that are going to give us that quick rush of energy, right? That really fast digesting carbohydrate, which is what we need right before and during our workouts. Because if we're eating something like, a whole grain bagel as we're out on a run, I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's just, it's going to be sitting in your stomach for a lot longer. You don't have access to that energy as quickly as if you were to just, take a couple of energy gels or, eat some candy as you're out there on the run.
Yeah.
Now, if we are filling up and, having a lot of our meals consisting of fast carbs, right, at other times of day outside of our pre and intra workout times, the challenge here is that they're not filling and they don't have a ton of like nutrients in them. So we're not getting all these essential vitamins and minerals and fiber and things to keep us full. So it's not that either of these things, these fast carbs or these slow carbs, are inherently good or bad. It's just that there's a time and a place for both. And we want to make sure that we're getting the right kind of carbs that our bodies need so that we're full and satisfied at our meal times, but then also have the energy that we need to perform well.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. As far as for the more like the long lasting, the complex carbs, what's your recommendation for time frame to consume those before a run? Like how long before you run?
Yeah, that depends a little bit on someone's personal gut tolerance.
Oh,
So
okay.
the really cool thing about our digestive system is that it's super adaptable. So it can be trained just like the rest of your body systems can be trained,
Oh,
like your
wow.
muscles, your heart, your lungs, all that stuff. Your gut is very, very trainable. And so one of the number one reasons that people don't feel properly for their workouts is because they get upset stomach, right? They get nausea, they feel sick, they're
Mm-hmm.
burping, they're getting cramps, they're running to the bathroom, they have all these GI
Yeah.
issues when they eat before they train. And so if you don't have a very well trained gut, if you haven't had a lot of practice with pre-workout fueling, then these symptoms are going to be, more severe and probably going to come up more often for you, especially if you just, you see this a lot with people where they never feel before a workout. And then they're like, hey, my half marathon's coming up in 3 days. What should I eat before my half marathon? It's like, well, you haven't eaten before a run for 6 years. So, whatever you choose it, like that ship has sailed. I'm sorry. We're not going to be able to work with this. So it takes practice, it takes time. So if
Okay.
you have a, relatively untrained digestive system, then you're probably going to need a few hours from eating something like a complex carb. And that maybe is going to be your toast or your bagel or your pasta or something
Mm-hmm.
like that to running, because you want your stomach to be empty by the time you're running. But as we get better at training the gut, as we can, really promote that adaptability, we can then eat and run much closer together. We don't have issues. The body just gets better
Uh,
at, simultaneously digesting food while directing blood flow to the working muscles. So we can
okay.
multitask a little bit
That
better.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So like for me personally, I mean, obviously I've been, training my gut for years because I'm a big, of course, believer in the value of pre-run nutrition. So my favorite pre-workout meal, for a longer workout is going to be a bowl of cereal with a banana and a glass of juice. And like I could eat that and be out the door in minutes.
Okay, because you've trained yourself to be able to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah. So you
That's great.
practice and it gets easier. And then you can tolerate more food and more fluids before and during your workouts. So you can actually reach these fueling targets that we have that we know are best for optimizing performance.
It's great. That's so interesting. So outside my world of what I teach, what I train. It's so cool to hear all this and how we can train our gut just like we can train our muscles and tendons. That's awesome.
Yep, absolutely.
So making that connection from the gut to the muscles and tendons, can you explain just a little bit, not super detailed, but briefly touch on how nutrition can impact risk of injury?
Yeah, there's a couple of really kind of big things here that we can talk about, right? We've got our overuse injury category, which of course is the most common thing that runners are going to run into. And so with these overuse injuries, if we're under fueling, so the term that we use to describe this would be something called low energy availability, LEA. And low energy availability is basically when there's not enough calories coming in, we're not eating enough calories to support our training demands and all of our body's background basic physiological functions. So all the things that have to be running in the background are resting metabolism. And then we also tack on the training that we're doing, the recovery that we need in between our workouts if there's not enough to go around energy wise, we're at a very, very high risk of injury because we're really limiting our body's ability to adapt and recover from the demands of our training. And eventually those tissues are going to just reach a point where they can't keep up and they're going to break down. It doesn't happen overnight, right? It's not something that happens one time. It's over weeks, months that it just, we are taking away our ability to adapt to the training demands that we're putting out there. So we see everything from, of course, muscle injuries, definitely connective tissue injuries. So like a lot of tendon problems and things like that can occur. And then also bone injuries. That's a huge one. So it's kind of everything. And hopefully along the way, people are going to notice that their performance is suffering and be able to tune into their nutrition. But again, because of this sort of diet culture world that we live in, it's sometimes the last thing on people's minds that maybe the problem is that I'm just not eating enough to fuel myself. And that's why I'm just getting into these constant injury cycles.
Yeah, that is such a great message. And I'm so glad that my listeners can hear this. I treat so many people with chronic injuries, not so much acute injuries, but just like it shows the importance of having a team of healthcare providers that understand everything. So, to have somebody who, has your nutrition and your physical therapy, and then maybe, your massage therapy, but not just treating injury as one factor. I'm injured and it's just my musculoskeletal system that's the problem. And so I'm just going to see one provider who's going to treat my musculoskeletal system. So that's excellent message that a lot of people don't know and probably need to hear in order to recover the best way.
Well, exactly. And, from that perspective, like, as clinicians working in that space, when you're seeing the same people and it's either the same injury that's just not getting better, or it's always something different, right? These people are just kind of chronically hurt. One of the first things that we should be inquiring about is their nutrition, maybe their mindset or some of the beliefs that they have about nutrition, and just digging a bit deeper with them. Now, we all have, of course, our individual like scopes of practice and comfort zone with being able to discuss different things more in depth, but to at least plant that seed of, hey, you know what, my physiotherapist mentioned nutrition and I wouldn't have thought about that. Like a lot of people would never think, oh, I should go seek out a dietitian for my injuries. That's not a connection they make. But when other professionals can just plant that seed, it's amazing what a difference it can make.
Yeah. Great advice. All right, one more or two more questions. What is or are the two most valuable lessons that you've learned along your journey as a runner?
Yeah, so for me, I think the biggest one is that I have to take my own advice. And I'm sure I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, kind of regardless of what industry you work in. But what we know in nutrition is that like knowledge does not always equal behavior change, right? And this is true for everyone and a lot of people that I work with. I don't have to tell my clients that fruits and vegetables are good for them and they should eat fruits and vegetables, right? Everybody knows this. But a lot of people don't eat enough fruits and vegetables. And so that gap from knowledge to actual behavior change is a little bit complex. For me, when one of the biggest lessons that I had to learn was really about fueling myself properly for the training demands that I was putting on myself. When it came down to like intra workout fueling and hitting my targets for carb loading and all of these things, I had the knowledge that they were important, but I wasn't necessarily taking the time to sit down, apply that knowledge to myself and plan it out. But when I started doing that, it was a game changer. Like when I was actually able to take everything that I know and that I tell other people to do and start doing that for myself, it made such an impact. It was made a huge difference. The second thing, of course, is for myself, polarizing my own training. So really settling into the slowing down, the easy running, putting my ego aside and working in that kind of 80-20 space, that 80-20 rule of running that we see. I mean, that's when, after so many years of frustration with my performance and things like my race times, I was finally able to start getting faster, was when I
Wow.
started polarizing. Like,
Yeah.
was sort of this initial, I wouldn't even call it success, but my initial race experience of like, yeah, okay, I did it. My training was terrible. I had no idea what I was doing way back then. That first kind of race experience, and then not being able to replicate that or get faster for so long because I didn't know what I was doing. Then once I learned more about running, took an interest in it, was able to figure it out, that was when things started to shift, and that's when it really started to get better.
Yeah, so there are two different perspectives from fueling and performance, both kind of with the same foundation of, or no, actually the opposite foundation. From the nutrition perspective, you knew, but you weren't executing. And then the performance, you were executing, but you just didn't know what you were doing.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so then once you got the help, or you found more information, then those two came together, and now you're a highly fueled runner.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
Awesome. All right. Is there anything else that you want to share to the audience that you think that would be very valuable to them?
Yeah, I mean, really the biggest take-home message that I can kind of put out there for the average runner who would be listening to this is that if running is feeling really hard, if things aren't clicking, if you're not getting better, if you are having these constant injuries, like if you're struggling, it's not supposed to be this way. Like, running is not supposed to be torture. It's not supposed to be punishment. It's not supposed to be so hard every single day that it's just killing you to get through your workouts. And if you're feeling really run down, if you're always hurt, if you don't have any energy, if things aren't clicking for you, look at your nutrition, because it's estimated that 70% of athletes aren't meeting their energy requirements. So when I
Wow.
mentioned before low energy availability, there's research out there, looking at these different things. And then we have the more extreme sort of version of low energy availability, where people are developing, symptoms and sometimes lasting consequences. We call that relative energy deficiency in sport. But this low energy availability space where someone's not meeting their needs, well over half of people are not fueling properly. And I know that's definitely what I see out there, in the different running communities, Facebook groups, certainly the followers who connect with me, my clients. Rarely do I meet someone who is ticking off all the boxes when it comes to calorie intake, getting the right mix of macronutrients, meeting all their targets for vitamins and minerals, all of that stuff. It's not very common. So there's huge potential to really enjoy running and to actually get better at it when we have a really dialed in strategy. So if it's all feeling really hard, if you're feeling anxious, guilty, unsure about what to eat when, look at your nutrition, get some help, because it makes such a difference in your health, your enjoyment of running, and then your longevity in the sport, like your ability to be a runner until you're a very old person one day.
I love that. I love that. Running shouldn't be hard. And if it is, then we need to look at lifestyle and behavior and choices. Excellent,
Exactly.
excellent message.
And I mean, sometimes it's going to be hard, right? Like, of course, we have hard workouts. There's like, we're going to push ourselves. There's going to be times it's going to be hard. But if like every workout, or just the rest, you get your workout done, and if the rest of the day you just like have zero drive and motivation to do anything else, and if all that stuff just isn't clicking, there's a world of opportunity when it comes to better.
Awesome. Well, that's a great segue to, where can people find you if they want to learn more or connect with you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so I also have a podcast. It is called Fuel, Run, Recover, and you can find it on all the major platforms, all the ones that are out there. If you search it, it should pop up right away. And we also put the episodes out on YouTube as well, if that's your thing. And then my Instagram is definitely where I spend the most of my time on social media. So I'm at Steph, the Runner's Dietitian. Again, easy enough to search me and find me. I don't have my last name in there, so someone has to figure out how to spell my last name because it's a doozy. And then my website to learn more about my programs and how I work with runners and help runners is at www.stephaniehnatiuk.com. And I'm sure that you can just link that website in the show notes again, so people don't have to
Yes.
try and figure out my last name,
We
because
can link all of that.
it does not sound like how it is spelled. So I will try to make it easy for you guys to track me down. But yeah, that's where I spend most of my time hanging out online, and basically runners from all over the world can access my programs, my online services and everything. And it's been really great to be able to do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all of the valuable information and advice that you've shared.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for
All
having
right.
me.
Have a wonderful weekend.
You too. Bye.
Bye, Steph.